Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always and super frequently with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Well, this is the fourth podcast we've recorded in the last 24 hours, which is, it seems like a lot, but, news is good at this point. And guess what, Tony? The new phone books are here.
Indeed. The Big Ten has released the football schedule. It is 10 games for each team, all conference games as expected. And I guess, Tom, let's just start out by running down. I'll read Ohio State's schedule here, and then we can just talk about everything. Ohio State will open Thursday, September 3rd at beautiful Illinois. Then September 12th, they will be home against Rutgers, in theory. Week 3, September 19th, going to Purdue, the scene of the crime in 2018. And then week 4, September 26th, hosting Indiana. And then they have a week off. Week 5, October 3rd, they will take the week off. And then they will get back to action week 6, October 10th, home against Nebraska. Week 7, October 17th, they are at Michigan State. Then the following week, week 8, October 24th, home against Michigan. And then week 9, October 31st, Halloween, they are at Maryland. Week 10, November 7th, they go to Penn State. Week 11, November 14th, they have another week off. And then they wrap up the regular season, week 12, November 21st, with the Iowa Hawkeyes. And then the entire conference has an off week on November, week 13, November 28th, in case there's some things they have to take care of. And then the Big Ten championship game is still as scheduled, December 5th. And Tom, the big story here is Ohio State, Michigan, scheduled for October 24th. And we'll get to that, but other than that, anything immediately stand out for you regarding the Buckeyes?
The start of the season is not super inspiring. This is very much a beggars and choosers situation, but at Illinois, home for Rutgers, at Purdue, home for Indiana. If something happens and the season gets scrapped on October 1st, that's going to be a real I guess we found out what it looks like when Ohio State plays on junior varsity difficulty this year. That's not, it would really, I was really hoping that you'd have, throw a Penn State game up there, throw the Michigan game up there, just something a little more inspiring in that first month. There's plenty of storylines. Storyline number 1, hey, they're playing football, which, I'm real excited for that storyline this year, so that's good. Hosting Rutgers week 2, that's a little concerning to me because that's a program that's had some major issues with quarantine, and I don't know, maybe it's better to get them out of the way early in the year because you can, maybe they're more focused and they can get more, kind of keep their eye on the ball for a few weeks, and then once they've lost 2 games by 9,000 points, and then they decide they're tired of playing football, then they can. the back half of Rutgers' schedule is at Purdue, at Michigan State, home for Indiana, home for Illinois, and at Wisconsin. And other than at Wisconsin, there's no one in the back half of that schedule that would materially impact things if Rutgers infects half of their team. So I guess that's good news. But yeah, I think I'm most excited for just, hey, there's football. And boy, this is going to be the most interesting October in the history of Ohio State football.
It sure will. I thought it was interesting with Ohio State opening on Thursday. They're going to have 2 extra days to prepare for Rutgers, which it's a little excessive, but maybe in that time, they can do more testing for Rutgers, and maybe it's because they need that time to put plastic up on the walls and just get everything ready and bring the Lysol in and just try to make things as safe as possible for everybody. The trip to Purdue is, I think that's the game I threw out as a possibility back when Gene Smith was saying they wanted 10 games. This would make maybe the most sense, and it would have to be on the road. And it has come to fruition. And I think while Illinois and Rutgers is not an inspiring start, Purdue is a team with a bunch of offensive weapons. Ohio State is breaking in a new secondary. At least they will have 2 games. I think it's probably 2 good warm-up games and not that these 2 teams will replicate Purdue, but at least the secondary will have a chance to get solidified before they face a passing attack like Purdue. And we remember what happened the last time they faced Rondale Moore, and now you've got David Bell and Milton Wright and a couple of other guys added to that receiving core. This is assuming, Tom, that Rondale Moore plays this year. Like, he's a guy that I could see opting out because he is a possible, like, people love him as a draft prospect, even though he's just a true junior and didn't play last year. But maybe for Ohio State's sake, he would say, you know what? I'm going to opt out for at least the first 3 weeks, and then I'll come back.
I mean, look, this is Ohio State playing at Ross-Ade Stadium. What could possibly go wrong? I mean, come on. Let's be realistic here.
No idea.
Yeah, I mean, if Rondale Moore had played last season, I think you'd have a better chance of him potentially opting out, because he does sort of fit the profile of the kind of guy who might opt out this year, the guy who is probably going to be a high draft pick no matter what, and who is playing on a team that doesn't have a ton of national championship kind of aspirations. Although, I mean, we just saw Penn State just lost Micah Parsons for the season. He just opted out, and Penn State is a little better program than I expected to see that coming from, especially after hearing from the Ohio State players yesterday. I mean, that seemed very unanimous that they were all planning on playing. So, if for example, like last year, AJ Epinesa at Iowa, that's the kind of player who I would have thought, like, yeah, I mean, he's going to be a first or second round kind of pick, and if Iowa's going to just go 8-4 again or 7-5 again, like, yeah, that's the kind of player I would have thought maybe would be more likely to opt out. To have that happen to Penn State was a little bit surprising to me, but yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, Purdue. I mean, you talked about Ohio State kind of easing into the Purdue game. Purdue is not easing into the Ohio State game. They open at Michigan, and then they're home for Iowa, and then they have Ohio State at home. So that's they're getting thrown into the deep end of the pool pretty quickly.
That will be interesting to see how they respond in those first 2 games, and then they host Ohio State. Those first 4 games, there should be no issues for the Buckeyes. That Purdue game may be like 63-35 or something like that. I could see kind of a high scoring affair between those 2 teams, with Ohio State having the 63, of course. I mean, come on. It's not like Ohio State is going to go there and get blown out.
Ohio State's going to lose by 4 touchdowns at Purdue? Come on. When would that happen? I can't even imagine.
Couldn't even imagine. So then after that bye week, Ohio State begins the rough stretch of the season. Although it doesn't start with Nebraska. Maybe it does. Maybe this is the year, Tom, where Nebraska is finally where we thought they would be with Scott Frost in year 1. Maybe year 3 is now year 1. Year 4 will be year 2, year 5, and so on. So maybe they're a little decent. I still don't expect them to kind of have the wherewithal and all of that. And then Michigan State is the only team on Ohio State's schedule who has a bye week before they play the Buckeyes, which, who cares? It's Michigan State this year. It's a new, assuming, like with Rutgers, assuming Michigan State is fielding a team this year, go ahead, take all the bye weeks you like. They don't really have the personnel to withstand the Ohio State attack. Although, it's in East Lansing, and it's the week before Michigan. Maybe the Buckeyes will be looking ahead towards the Wolverines. And Tom, if Ohio State is looking ahead towards Michigan, what kind of score could we expect at East Lansing?
I think in general, my philosophy this year is I'm not always great at predicting things, and in a wildly unpredictable year, I think I'm going to be even worse at predicting things. But maybe this is the year I get really good, because the just inherent randomness of the universe and all of that's going on is going to throw everything just right into line for me. So let's see. Michigan State comes in. They go the 2 weeks before that bye. They're at Penn State, at Michigan, and then a bye week. So they're probably beat up. They're probably coming in. They've got Minnesota week 1. I'm going to say they're like 2-3, maybe 1-4 coming in. Ohio State coming off a game against Nebraska, going into the Michigan game. Yeah, that does seem like a trap game. I'm going to say Ohio State wins that one. Ohio State probably goes into that game favored by like 30 and then wins it like 31-10 or something like that. And it's a really gross, uninspiring game because it is Ohio State at Michigan State, and that's how that goes. The real question to me is, we've never seen Ohio State have to handle a sandwich game after the Michigan game before. That's normally it's the Big Ten championship game. That's a game that you get up for. Ohio State plays Michigan on October 24th. They play at Penn State November 7th. Probably the two biggest games on the schedule. Right in between those, at Maryland, and Maryland is not going to be great, but boy howdy, that is what a sandwich game, trap game looks like. That is going to be, if Maryland still has a football team at that point, I'm going to take Maryland plus whatever people are going to give me on that one, because that just seems like, Ryan Day worked out his angst on them last year, and so now that'll be the really uninspiring crap game on the schedule this year.
It's fortunate for the Buckeyes that it is only Maryland at that point, because you're right. You have no idea what that is like the week after. I mean, we see it with the Big Ten championship. That's a little bit different. You don't really let down from that. But like if that was Purdue at Purdue, I think people would maybe take a closer look at it. Maryland, October 31st last week of that month, they're going to be down to their fourth or fifth quarterback like always. So there's less of a concern. They'll be starting a linebacker, a quarterback, or a former defensive end or whatever. It won't be an actual quarterback. So that will help Ohio State's chances. But it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Michigan State, you mentioned that they have Penn State and then Michigan and then the bye week and then Ohio State. That's assuming nothing happens in those first 3 weeks to like push the schedule down or anything like that. Or like say they can't play Penn State before they play Michigan, and then the Penn State game has to hop Michigan. So it'll go Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, like all 3 weeks in a row. That would not be great for Michigan State, but really the schedule as a whole is probably not great for Michigan State this year. And then, so you mentioned at Maryland will be interesting. Then at Penn State, November 7th, pretty late in the season to get get these two divisional opponents in with Michigan and Penn State. I know there was talk, we talked about maybe, were they going to front load it? They have not. The fact that it is time, and it is interesting. The 1 year Penn State is super late in the season at Penn State is the year that crowds won't be allowed to be full bore. So the whiteout effect won't be like this. If clearly this game was going to be earlier in the season, so there would have been a whiteout in effect for the Buckeyes. Now that they can't have that whiteout, they're like, throw it in November. Nobody cares.
Well, yeah, that November 7th, that's a game that, looking at the rest of the Big Ten schedule that week, there is nothing inspiring on there. The whole Western Division basically is off. Indiana plays Michigan State, Maryland plays Michigan, and Illinois plays Rutgers. So I don't want to spoil any surprises, but I have a feeling that's going to be the big noon kickoff on Saturday, November 7th, unless they really want to get Illinois at Rutgers going. That's probably your big noon kickoff. And that, I mean, of all the things that worked to Ohio State's advantage this year, the two most hostile atmospheres that they were going to have to face on the road were at Oregon, which is not happening anymore, and at Penn State, which has gone from almost certainly a primetime whiteout, 100,000 fans kind of situation to probably noon, maybe 20,000. I mean, that's all extremely up in the air right now, but all of a sudden that goes from the most hostile atmosphere you're going to face all season to basically a glorified spring game in terms of atmosphere. So that's going to be, I mean, that's, of all the things that have not worked out this year, that certainly is something that I think is working to Ohio State's favor. That that you've got that, and then your other road games are at Maryland, nope, at Michigan State, nope, at Illinois, when it is not going to be. I mean, it's scheduled for September 3rd, Thursday, September 3rd. That doesn't mean that it will not somehow be 38 degrees with a 50-mile-an-hour wind in Champaign. I'm not writing that off as a total possibility, but like that's when you'd want to go to Illinois is Labor Day weekend. At Purdue is never easy for Ohio State for some reason, but that is a manageable road schedule. There's nothing on that road schedule now with the lack of a whiteout, lack of a primetime game at Penn State. There's nothing on that road schedule that looks like, oh, that's a real danger spot.
And maybe a lack of Micah Parsons in Happy Valley.
Yeah.
What the reports are that he is going to opt out, so that brings Ohio State's schedule even lower on the strength of schedule board. And then so they end up November 21st with the Iowa Hawkeyes, which, it's a nice way to end the regular season, I guess. I mean, sure. It's better than ending it with Rutgers or Illinois, so I'm okay with that. No real big thoughts other than it's better for Ohio State that the game is in Columbus than in Iowa for obvious reasons. Maybe, Tom, this is where the payback finally comes in, and all of those Buckeyes that are on that 2017 team, all 7 of them by now, can exact some form of revenge.
Well, this is setting up all of a sudden for an exciting revenge tour of sorts. Oh, said that out loud. Yeah, at Purdue and home for Iowa. And, the interesting thing is the last time Ohio State did not play Michigan in the regular season finale was 1942, because a little thing called World War II was going on. That year, Michigan ended with Iowa, and Ohio State ended with Iowa Pre-Flight, which was a naval air station, like training base thing in Iowa. And they fielded a football team, and Ohio State ended with Iowa Pre-Flight. So now the 2 teams that Ohio State has ended the season with that were not Michigan for the last, I can do math, bunch of years was Iowa and Iowa Pre-Flight. And that, of course, is assuming nothing else changes, which I think we can all safely assume this is all going to happen exactly as scheduled with no changes whatsoever.
I am looking at a graphic of the schedule, so I don't know what could change now because this exists.
I mean, technically it's on a computer monitor, but it might as well be in stone. I mean, Moses might as well have brought this down from the mountain this morning. So yeah, I think definitely nothing's going to change. It is interesting how they structured this, because you've got a bye early in the schedule, and it looks like they're trying to have teams have a bye the week after they're scheduled to play someone. So Michigan has a bye and Michigan State has a bye the same time the week after they play. Ohio State and Indiana have a bye the week earlier. That's the week after Ohio State and Indiana are supposed to play. So I think looking at this, I get the sense that, maybe it is, if Ohio State and Indiana can't play week 4 for some reason, they both have a built-in bye week the week after that to just slide it right down. Same thing for Michigan State. Same thing for Purdue, Illinois. I mean, that is probably not a coincidence, would be my guess. That's how that first bye week works. And then basically the whole West has a bye the week of November 7th. Basically the whole East has a bye the week of November 14th. And then everyone is off the Saturday after Thanksgiving. So that's a good catch-all for anything that didn't get made up earlier can get made up that week. They have the Big Ten championship game scheduled for December 5th as usual, but at the bottom it notes December 12th, December 19th open. But that is potentially subject to change. You could slide some stuff later in the season, slide the Big Ten championship game a week if you needed to. There is a lot of flexibility built into this, which I think tells you that this is anything but a finished product.
Yeah, I like it. There's the flexibility that Gene Smith and Kevin Warren have both talked about is definitely in there. Gives teams at least 3 opportunities for makeups, and the way I heard it described is like the bye weeks are the first one like it's just collapsible. Like teams, like you said, share the bye weeks, so it's easier for the makeups to be had with the way they've done the schedule. So I like it. And then at the end, you've got the catch-all for whatever. Tom, let's talk about Ohio State and Michigan. October 24th in Columbus. We had suggested, or we have talked about the idea that, hey, if it happens in September, whatever, accept it. We would be fine with that. Now that the game is scheduled for October 24th, like, my attitude hasn't changed. I just want it. And I'm sure yours hasn't changed. I've seen people upset, like, well, if you're going to have a schedule where you play an opponent the last game of the season, why shouldn't it be Michigan? And okay, that's a fine attitude to have, I guess. But the fact that you have Michigan and then 2 bye weeks after that, two open dates after that, to eventually get that in if you need, I think that's maybe why there is you put it in the middle of the schedule, or in the middle of October, or when it is, and then there is more flexibility for Michigan. And it's still later in the season, which I guess helps, and maybe it's better than playing it early. I don't know. I don't really have any problems with it, knowing that, 1, let's just have it. 2, it's temporary. Now, if this was, because this is pretty much the suggested schedule back from, I don't know, like 2015 or whenever, when they were trying to move this game to October, and it was like, no, and everybody pretty much put their foot down and wouldn't let the Big Ten do it. So they're getting their 1-year reprieve to do this, but I don't have any huge issues with it, even though, yeah, Ohio State will close the season with Iowa. That's fine. I'm not going to get broken up about it. As every player we talked to on Tuesday said, any day, whatever day, doesn't matter. Let's just make sure it happens. And that's where I am.
Yeah, if this game happened on Labor Day weekend, like, yeah, that's fine. Whatever. Like, it's going to be weird, but whatever. Everything is weird this year. Whatever they have to do to make that game happen, great. Make it happen. Make it happen in a way that is safe for the players, safe for the coaches, safe for fans who were there, like, whatever. That's fine. Make it happen. And this is just sort of an insurance thing where you're playing a little bit earlier. So you've got, if for some reason it can't happen on October 24th, it can happen November 14th, because both teams have buys that week. And if it can't happen the week of November 14th, it can happen the weekend of November 28th, which is when it was originally scheduled to happen anyway. So you've got a couple options there to try and get it in, because, I mean, let's look at this from a, let's see, should we call this the realistic or the cynical view? Let's say both. The Big Ten can't have fans in the stands, or nearly as many fans in the stands. So the Big Ten needs every nickel it can possibly get from TV partners, because they need to make they are they're a business that's been closed and lost a bunch of its customers, lost a bunch of its revenue, and they have to find a way to just basically scrap out every nickel they can this season. So guess what? TV partners, what do you need? You want Ohio State, Michigan? That's the first game everyone picks every year. Guess what? They are going to do everything in their power possibly in the world to make sure there's an Ohio State, Michigan game that Fox gets to televise this year. That's it. That's it. That's it. That's the tweet. Like, that's the end of the story. They need the money. They need TV partners, need the inventory. They are going to do everything in their power to make that happen. And, I mean, there are all sorts of questions about, should this season happen? Will it happen? And I keep going back to, they need the money. That is the most important thing. There's going to be a whole lot of other stuff gets canceled before Ohio State, Michigan gets canceled. Like, that is something they really, really need to get in. And, I mean, I think every team has, rivalry game that they want to play. Illinois, Indiana wants to play Purdue. Like, yep, that's a great traditional rivalry. That's wonderful. That game is scheduled for the week of November 21st, the last week of the regular season, because it's like, yeah, I mean, that's a good traditional rivalry. That is not going to make or break anyone's TV calendar. That's something that they can live, they can take it or leave it. But yeah, Ohio State, Michigan, whatever they need to do to get Ohio State, Michigan in, they are going to do to get Ohio State, Michigan in this year.
I also think it's interesting you mentioned Indiana and Purdue at the end of the season. Also, the Big Ten's two lone academic institutions meet at the end of the season. Michigan is at Northwestern. So that's good. Like the two brains, the two Harvards of the West get to play each other at the end of the season, and that will be fantastic to watch as well. Looking at this schedule overall, I'm looking forward to week one. We'll be on Saturday. We'll be able to watch from home, which is great because we'll already have all of our work done from Thursday, and we can just chill and watch Purdue go to Michigan and throw the ball around and choke away the game. Like Purdue could absolutely win that game, but for some reason they won't because that's Purdue. And so that'll be fun to watch. Michigan opens with that Purdue game. Then they go to Minnesota. Then they host Penn State. That could be 3-0. It could be 1-2. It could be 2-1. Right now, Tom, I'm gonna spring this on you. What will Michigan's record be after 3 games this season? They open at home with Purdue. Then they are at Minnesota. And then they host Penn State. What will their record be after 3 games?
Boy, that's interesting because I guess 2-1. I'll take 2-1. I mean, both Minnesota and Penn State have lost pretty significant players, and Purdue will be better than they were last year just because they have an actual full roster of players this year, which will help. But yeah, I think Michigan drops one of those 3. Then they beat Rutgers. They beat Michigan State, so they're 4-1. They have a bye week. Here's the one that's intriguing to me. Yes, you go against Michigan State, okay, rivalry game, bye week. Then you have at Indiana, at Ohio State, home for Wisconsin. I have that Michigan at Indiana circled in pen on the printed out copy of this right now. That is, Indiana always gives Michigan a hard time. It just for some reason that game is always just a slog for Michigan, and especially when it's in Bloomington. Coming off a bye, coming off a week or game against Michigan State, looking ahead to Ohio State, that is the danger zone right there for Michigan. I don't think Indiana has beaten them since the 80s or the early 90s. This could be, I mean, like it's gonna take something weird. At this point, like Indiana is just cursed. It's gonna take something extremely weird to break the curse. And look around, friends. This is gonna be a real weird year. So yeah, that to me looks like a real danger spot for Michigan. That they could come in a little flat. You come in off a bye. You're looking ahead to Ohio State because this is. Let's face it, Michigan's season is going to be defined by the Ohio State game. If they lose the Ohio State game, especially if they get blown out in the Ohio State game, they could go 9-0 the rest of the season and no one's going to give a crap up there. If they get blown out by Ohio State, their season is a failure. And that's just, and then Harbaugh's 0-6 and every Michigan fan is just, is just gloom and doom again. That is, and they know that. They know that there. They know they have to beat Ohio State or at least be competitive with Ohio State this year. And that just screams to me, yep, they're just gonna overlook Indiana, and maybe they don't lose it, but maybe it's a 24-23 game that Indiana somehow miraculously blows at the last minute.
This Michigan schedule, I mean, I could see them 9-1. I could see them 4-6, just because yeah, they should be 2-1 to start the season. They could be 3-0, but they could also be 1-2. They won't lose at home to Michigan State. They could lose at Indiana. Obviously, they could lose at Ohio State. After that Ohio State game, they host Wisconsin, and at that point, Wisconsin's offense will be fine, and they may just run through a Michigan team that has given up from being beaten by Ohio State, and then you recover and you win at home against Maryland. And then you get a week off, and then you go to Northwestern, and Northwestern will Peyton Ramsey is the quarterback there now, former Indiana quarterback who has had some success against Michigan. The problem maybe for Northwestern is they will be at Minnesota the week before, and who knows what that will do for them. But Northwestern is such a toss-up. They don't do the things from one week to the next that you would expect anyway, so trying to predict what they will do is an impossible task. Before I move on to something else, Tom, we did have one question about the trap game for the Buckeyes. You kind of mentioned Maryland as the sandwich game. But if you're looking at Ohio State's schedule, where is the trap game? I would back in 2018, we looked at Purdue and it's like, well, just keep an eye on that game. Here, I don't expect Maryland to have enough of a roster to be a trap game for the Buckeyes. It's an interesting situation and one that bears watching. But when I look at trap games, for me, I have to look at the road games because I don't expect any of the home games to be issues. Although maybe that game after Purdue, which is home against Indiana, is sneaky. And I think Indiana is going to be more talented than their record, and I want to talk about Indiana in a bit because their schedule is not good for them. But if we're looking at a trap game, I guess I'm going to go with Purdue, even though it's early enough in the season that I think Ohio State's still going to be pretty focused on everything that's going on.
Yeah, I mean, Indiana is a team that is going to be better than you think this year. Purdue is going to be better than they were last year. I mean, there are losable games on this schedule. I mean, I think looking at the Michigan schedule, I think Michigan has 7 losable games out of 10. There's only 3. There's Rutgers, Maryland, and Michigan State that I think there's functionally no way they lose. Ohio State, if they come in flat, they could lose at Purdue. They could, if they really just, if they absolutely throttle Purdue and they start looking ahead to the bye week, you could blow it against Indiana if you really, really come in flat. Maybe Nebraska, probably not. They're probably still a year away. Michigan's always a little bit of a question mark. I think there's less chance they lose to Michigan than, say at Purdue, just because there's no chance they're overlooking Michigan, and you never know with like a Purdue or Indiana. Purdue, honestly, the fact that they lost there 2 years ago probably makes it less likely they'd lose this time because there's enough overlap with guys on that team that they will, they'll remember what happened the last time and not want it to happen again. And, at Penn State, sure, maybe, and here's the thing. There's going to be so much that is just up in the air this year that, if Justin Fields misses a game or two, games that are not looking losable right now could end up looking losable later. That's the tricky part, because it's just, you take the 2 or 3 best players off of literally any team in this league, and it's like, yeah, okay, the error bars get a lot bigger there for possible outcomes. At Maryland, I mean, Ohio State would have to come out really flat, and Maryland would have to do something really, really, really insane, like, I don't know, run some kind of misdirection or something, and that might be enough. Ohio State does have a first-time defensive coordinator. That's that can go a couple different ways. So, sure. I mean, there is very little this year that would completely shock me. Rutgers beating Ohio State would completely shock me. Illinois beating Ohio State week 1 would completely shock me. But the bar for absolutely shock me is a lot higher this year than normal, just because there's so many unknowns with all of these teams and personnel, and how are guys going to handle this, and is Rutgers going to get 5 games in and then just decide, screw it, we're bored, we're not gonna, we don't care whether we go 1-9 or 0-10, and start going to house parties again, and then infect half the league. There's just so many different ways this season could play out that it is almost impossible to know. Picking who's going to win each division this year. It's like, yeah, Ohio State is probably the smart money in the East, and in the West, I don't know, maybe Wisconsin. I would have said maybe Minnesota before, but but losing Rashad Bateman hurts that. I mean, you sent me a list of Big Ten strength of schedule, and I don't know where you got it or where the calculation was, but Wisconsin was judged to have the easiest schedule in the Big Ten, and Ohio State was judged to have the second easiest schedule in the Big Ten. So, assuming things are predictable this year, that's a pretty good bet for the two teams who are in the Big Ten championship game, I guess.
I do find it amusing that you suggest that Ohio State may lose to Indiana because they're looking ahead to the bye week. The bye week, where they're going to get to go and sit in their apartments and do nothing. Ooh. I am so psyched. Probably get on Netflix and watch something for the fourth time. I can't wait. And now I've overlooked, oh no, Indiana just beat us. But oh well, there's a new episode, a new season of whatever dropping on Netflix this weekend. I just couldn't take my mind off of it. It's the new Mindhunter, and I'm just too wrapped up in BTK to think about Indiana at this moment. I apologize, but it's my favorite show. So yeah, you could understand that if that were to happen. We've all been there. Indiana, who I think is good enough to win 8 or 9 games this year, opens at Wisconsin, and then they have Penn State in week 2. Then they have Illinois at home in week 3. Then they go to Ohio State, a bye week, then at Minnesota, then host Michigan. This is a team that, like I said, I think they could win 8 or 9 games, but they could also start like 3-3 just by losing their road games and winning their home games. And that would require wins against Penn State and Michigan, which Indiana doesn't do. So conceivably, this could be like a 1-5 start. And I just don't see that happening for this team because I think they are too good. This is the year they have to beat at least one of Penn State and Michigan. And we've said that before about them. Like, if you are going to take this next step and become something more than just Indiana, like you have to start beating the 3 teams at least once. Like you have to beat Ohio State, Penn State, or Michigan. You have to beat those teams at some point, sometimes, in order to become more than just Indiana. 7-5 is what you strive for. 8-4 is amazing. And this year, like, there's a chance having both of those teams at home and this type of crazy year, maybe they beat them both. And I think that those first 6 games are not good for them. But if they can, it's like 3-3 would be a pretty good start just based on those 3 victories. Whomever they would be against would be 3 quality wins. Well, 2 quality wins and Illinois.
Yeah, I mean, Indiana is in a normal season probably a team I would have picked 9-3, maybe 10-2 if everything breaks right. Because I mean, they almost won 9 games last year. They had a spectacular collapse against Tennessee in their bowl game to snatch a defeat from the jaws of victory. But this is not a real friendly schedule. They could have a very good season and go 5-5 or 6-4. That's a team that really needs, they need that Indiana State or Ball State week 1 game where, okay, hey, they won by 30. Okay, week 2, okay, you're playing some other crappy MAC team. All right, now you're 2-0. They don't get that. They don't have that kind of ramp up period. It is right into at Wisconsin, home for Penn State, at home for Illinois, at Ohio State bye week, at Minnesota, home for Michigan. Like you said, that is a very good team, a team I would normally say, potentially a 9-win kind of team, and they could start 1-5. That is a brutal start. Now you finish up home for Maryland, at Rutgers, at Michigan State, home for Purdue. You could very easily win those last 4 and finish like a 5-5 kind of season. But yeah, that is a tough start to the year. And yeah, I mean, I think they should start 2-4. I think they get, they'll get someone. They'll get Penn State or they'll get Michigan somewhere in there. winning the road games is probably tough. That's probably asking a lot. But, again, like all you need is one someone's quarterback to get sick or, one injury or something. And you're going to have, this is going to be the season that, they're going to be teams that miss point spreads by 30 points this year just because something crazy happens in the middle of the week, and all of a sudden the team that was favored by 2 touchdowns loses by 2-3 touchdowns because their starting quarterback and the backup got sick, or their offensive line, 3 guys in their offensive line are sick or something like that, and then all of a sudden everything, not everyone has Ohio State's depth. That's I think the key point, that it would be very bad for Ohio State if certain guys missed games, but Ohio State, if Ohio State's missing a couple offensive linemen, it wouldn't be great. They're probably half of the league or more where if they're missing 2 offensive linemen, it is just going to be, oh no, blood everywhere. This is terrible.
It will be interesting to see some of these opening lines like each week. For instance, if Ohio State opens as like a 6-point favorite at Illinois, you're like, what does Vegas know? They're going to be working so hard to get all of the COVID information and all of these injury lists. So watching the lines will just be interesting, where you're like, this line is off. And then 2 days later, it comes out that this person is sick or whatever. And so that'll be another added element to this season. You mentioned, I want to go back to the sandwich game with Maryland for Ohio State. And if Michigan isn't doing so well this season, what about, and maybe I've floated this before, and this isn't real. This is just make-believe. What if, say, there was a Michigan player who is suspected to be infected with COVID-19, and they keep him away from the team, but at the end of the Ohio State game, they sent him in. And you've got like this COVID Mary guy who just runs in and starts hitting everybody from Ohio State and infects the team. And now Ohio State loses like their last 3 games. Michigan wins the division. Is that tainted, Tom?
It is. That is probably not the most likely way I see the season playing out, but yeah, good. I think that's definitely something that it's probably a little bit on the dirty side of the trick play spectrum, I guess.
More SEC than Big Ten, you're saying?
A little more SEC than Big Ten, yes.
Anything else from the schedule, Tom? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, as we've been recording,
no.
That should just be the title of every one of our episodes this year. As we've been recording, Big Ten hashtag Big Ten United, players of the Big Ten just dropped a something on the Players Tribune very similar to what the Pac-12 did. We've started a dialogue in good faith with the Big Ten. Hope the NCAA will soon follow suit. Here basically a proposal on things that need to be done, and third party approved by players to administer COVID testing and enforce all COVID-19 health and safety standards, which would help with the situation you just laid out. And
the Big Ten is doing that, by the way. Third party.
It's official. And this is something that is a little. It's similar to what the Pac-12 players laid out, where a lot of the stuff they were doing was already in place, but I think they're just kind of looking to make sure that this is really something that's happening. Sufficient penalties for noncompliance. Mandate for athletics personnel to report suspected violations, ensure all athletes have up-to-date information about the risks that COVID-19 may pose, adherence to WHO and CDC guidance for sporting events in compliance with all federal, state, and local statutes and regulations, safety standards, social distancing requirements, minimum cleaning and sanitation protocols. There's a section on testing, contact tracing, and related procedures, including testing twice per week with an FDA-approved test with less than 1% false negatives, testing on the day of competition or within 24 hours of competition for each team with an FDA-approved test with less than 5% false negatives, with results delivered at least 2 hours before competition. Now, I don't know exactly how realistic that is. I don't know whether those tests exist. Again, I am not a doctor.
But you are a podcaster.
I am, which makes me an expert on everything. So, yeah, I honestly don't know whether they're asking here for stuff that exists or stuff that they hope exists a month from now. There's a lot of this stuff that is, there's a lot of this stuff that seems very common sense. One thing that they do say, ban the use of COVID-19 liability waivers, and that's something that, that's interesting because we've had several Ohio State players say that they would be willing to sign basically whatever in order to play, but that may be a deal breaker for others. Automatic medical redshirt for any player who misses any competitions due to a positive test, or mandatory quarantine due to contact tracing, and complimentary access to the Big Ten Network for athletes' family members. That's
really
that's interesting. I didn't have access to the Big Ten Network this morning, even though I supposedly did. It didn't load for me correctly this morning. Here's the interesting stuff. Hazard-related economic support, coverage for all out-of-pocket medical expenses related to COVID-19, both short-term and long-term, incurred by active college athletes. Scholarship protections, including room, board, and stipend in the event that the season is canceled due to COVID-19. An adjustment to the cost of living stipend to account for the increase in personal expenses related to limited access that players have to facilities. Reimbursements to stipends for stipends that were reduced during the summer. If I see one thing on here that I could see as a deal breaker is the coverage for all out-of-pocket medical expenses related to COVID-19, both short-term and long-term, incurred by active college athletes. Their coverage short-term, long-term is a question. That's one of the things that will, when the NCAA uses the phrase student athlete, it is because they are trying to tell you these are not employees and we don't have any long-term responsibility for their, they don't get a pension, they don't have lifetime medical care and all of that kind of stuff. That long-term coverage for out-of-pocket medical expenses related to COVID-19, that could be the one thing on here that just immediately jumps out to me as a potential, a potential sticking point. Because a lot of this is stuff that, honestly, within the Big Ten, this is all stuff that everyone should be doing anyway. And I have a feeling if you went through this list really, really thoroughly, Ohio State is probably doing literally all of this stuff already. Outside of, the long-term health thing, maybe not, but yeah, that I don't see this being an issue at Ohio State, but there may be programs in the Big Ten where this turns into a little bit more of a sticking point.
I don't have a huge issue with wanting the coverage beyond your college days, but I think you'd have to show that it comes from playing or that it came from the contact tracing would have to show that, yes, it came from getting hit by somebody and that person had it and that's how you contracted it or whatever, or that you got it from a staffer. I don't think it's outrageous to want medical care if now we've seen issues with the heart issues and maybe that's something that you carry on. We really don't know what the long-term effects of COVID-19 are, which is another reason why schools might be a little reticent to be like, sure, yeah, sign us up, long-term care, we got you. Because, we're 3 or 4 months into seeing the reactions and the results of this. And that's not long-term at all. So I don't think there's anything wrong with asking, certainly. And maybe schools and I wouldn't say the NCAA, I don't know who, I guess the schools would be responsible down the road. I don't think that's an outrageous ask, but like you said, it's probably not something that schools would be quick to adopt, and we'll see how it goes. I know Justin Fields talked about a little bit about it on Tuesday, that there's been some discussions among some of the Big Ten players, and so I guess we're seeing the result of that, and probably as we've been talking, Tom, something new has come out. That's just how it is.
Yeah, and you're exactly right that the ask is an entirely reasonable one there. I just think that is something that the Big Ten schools themselves, there's a lot of cost uncertainty there on their end, and that's something that administration people may go, that's not something we can guarantee right now. And, that is a reasonable ask, and that is something that the Big Ten administrators are not unreasonable to say, this is something that we can't guarantee right at this moment because there's so much cost uncertainty with everything. So, yeah, like I said, that if there is a sticking point there from that list, I could see that being it. the other thing that happened since we started recording is Ohio State released a video, just a shot of their countdown clock, 115 days, 3 hours, 34 minutes, and then all of a sudden 80 days, just boom, done. The game just got 5 weeks closer, and
it's like we jumped into the future.
There is that countdown clock does have a little bit of a Back to the Future kind of look to it. So yeah, it's it has not escaped the notice of Ohio State that the Ohio State Michigan game is now scheduled 5 weeks earlier than it was before. So just in case you were worried, because I'm sure that was a big concern for a lot of people.
Anything else from the schedule that caught your eye before we wrap up? I'm just skimming through here. And Indiana, by the way, while we were talking about them, their added crossover game was at Minnesota. Sorry. So congratulations, Tom Allen. Here you go. Now you also get to go to Minnesota for fun. Good job.
Hooray. That's good, I guess.
Penn State at Northwestern to open the season is interesting. Northwestern at Penn State. It makes it less interesting. But I am looking forward to just being able to watch these games, and Purdue at Michigan. There's going to be some fireworks there. I'm not convinced, Tom, that I think Indiana might just go into Wisconsin and win. Like week one, weird stuff happens. Friday night, maybe. I mean, there's no Jonathan Taylor, but sure, there probably is another redshirt freshman or true freshman who's going to rush for 2,400 yards this year. Of course, that's just what the Badgers do. But maybe Indiana goes in there and surprises everybody, and then they lose like 4 or 5.
That would be. Here's the thing. That would be way too predictable for this year. Like that would be just such an extremely, extremely predictable thing that just doesn't seem like how this is going. That's all. It just doesn't seem that is not a very 2020 vibe. That's all I'm saying.
I do find it interesting that we haven't discussed Penn State's schedule at all. Just pointing that out. Like, just keep that in mind, people. We've discussed that as much as we've talked about Indiana more than Penn State. So just think about that. Anything else you got, Tom?
Nope. I think we are good here. And boy, I hope we don't have to do another podcast later this afternoon, because that will mean something has really gone crazy. I think 4 podcasts in a 24-hour period is probably enough for people to listen to. And
we will talk. Oh, Ohio State. By the way, guys, Ohio State kicks off fall camp a day early, so they will start on Thursday rather than Friday, because they will begin their season on Thursday rather than Saturday. So they're actually going to lose a day by starting tomorrow. They could have started theoretically today. That's what other schools that are starting on Thursday are allowed to do. But they will start tomorrow. Camp will be underway. We will talk to Ryan Day, I'm guessing, after practice, and we'll get all kinds of information from him. And then, Tyler, are we going to do a show right after that?
Of course. I mean, we have to. There is news to report. There's stuff to talk about now. So yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, 4 podcasts in a day is a lot, and that's okay. There is stuff to talk about, and yeah, we'll probably do 2 more podcasts tomorrow, because we'll do a Buckeye Weekly, and we'll probably record a morning show for Friday to talk about everything we heard from Ryan Day for the Morning Scoop podcast. So yeah, you're probably not done with us yet. So go ahead and make sure you spend a bunch of time today and tomorrow either driving around, out for a walk maybe, so you can get through all these podcasts. Like go take your dog for like 7 walks today. You'll have plenty of stuff to keep you entertained. And here's a little life hack: play it at 1.5 speed, and then you'll get through it a little quicker, and you can still understand us. And it will get you through more episodes of the podcast in less time. Which all of a sudden is extremely important, because after a summer of not having a lot to talk about, boy howdy, do we have a lot of stuff to talk about now.
At some point, maybe we could do a camp preview, like maybe during the middle of camp when things finally start to slow down. We can preview camp.
Our Ohio State fall camp mid-view. That'll be great. We'll just, sure, absolutely.
Camp mid-view / Illinois preview, because the game is tomorrow.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be quite a month, and you know what? If we are covering an Ohio State-Illinois game on Thursday, September 3rd, I will be the first person in history to be excited to be in Champaign, Illinois.
I love it. You picture all of these people like being in Paris for the first time and just being so happy, or, oh, you're finally seeing the Golden Gate Bridge from like the hill over on the side there. You're like, oh my gosh, this is all I've ever wanted. And then as soon as we cross, we'll be posting the Champagne sign, the city limits, and just the lovely Illinois campus, and it would be amazing. But we don't even know, like, will we be allowed? Will we even be wanted? So that's all to come yet. Like the credentialing, the media stuff is still to come. The television packaging and how all of this is going to work is still to come as well. And really, the TV partners have to wait until all of the schedules are set so that they can have the draft where they draft weekends. And I think Fox gets the first pick, and that's why they always pick the week of the Michigan game. And so basically what they all do is the networks will draft weeks, and then when those weeks, then they can select within those weeks. And so all of that still has to happen yet. So there's still plenty of unknowns. But man, Tom, when was the last time we were this, I guess, upbeat about the season happening? Is it because just as we said earlier, the schedule is right here, so it's happening. Like it's on my computer, so I don't know what anybody else is talking about. But even though Kevin Warren said, it's not a guarantee yet, and Gene Smith has said it's not a guarantee yet, and we know that, but it feels pretty good.
Well, just the trend over the last week was a little bit concerning because it was they were going to have the schedule nailed down 3 weeks ago, and then all of a sudden we didn't hear about it 2 weeks ago. We didn't hear about it last week. We didn't hear about it on Monday this week. You had the reports out of the Big Ten office that like, maybe they're thinking about stuff now that Rutgers has done.
That was
what
yesterday.
I know. Yes. We had vaguely discouraged sounding podcast 12 hours ago. It's just, it is just, everything is moving very quickly. There's a lot of uncertainty, but it is unquestionably, this is a positive step that they put this out, that they felt comfortable enough to put this out. Because the other thing, if they hadn't put this out, the other thing that could have happened is they could have had a statement that said, nope, and we're not going to play a season. We don't feel safe to play a season. And I think you and I have both been generally on the optimistic side of things with the likelihood of a season. And there are a bunch of different reasons for that. Mine is the extremely cynical, they need the money, and that's fine. I think they have found a way to potentially do it safely, so great. But yeah, as soon as this came out, that was, there's 5 things that need to happen before the start of a season, but this was absolutely one of those, and it was a big one. So you get this down, like, okay, now people have to get through fall camp and not have people do stupid stuff like going out to bars and hanging out with with random students. Like, you have to be smart. You have to not screw this up. But this was unquestionably a big step, and hopefully, this is something that now people have a little bit more of a tangible goal to work towards, and that can keep everyone focused and doing what they need to do to make it actually happen.
As Tom said, we're very excited. And unless, Tom, since we have started talking about being excited and being hopeful, has anything come out on Twitter to counter our enthusiasm in this 1 minute?
No, not in the last minute or so.
Okay.
But yeah, it's still okay. But yeah, let's see. The Ralph Russo 2 minutes ago, the NCAA is telling members that if 50% of schools competing in a sport in any division cancel or postpone that sport, there will be no fall championship held in that sport. Decisions by August 21st. That does not apply to FBS football. The NCAA does not have oversight of the championships of FBS football. So that will impact soccer or, any of the other fall sports that could happen. But that's, we should stop recording before something else changes that. But yes.
I was just going to say, as I wrap up here, Tom, please continue to refresh Twitter and then interrupt me at any point through this wrap up. Okay. So we do want to thank you all for listening. Hopefully you're getting through all of the shows. Hopefully you're excited about the progress being made towards the season, the progression towards September and the start of the season. And now you know when Ohio State, in theory, could possibly, maybe, open the season, hopefully. And so we can begin to start talking about an actual college football season. Camp opens tomorrow. We will talk to Ryan Day. Then we will get back with you guys as soon as we can right after that to let you know what Ryan Day said, because that's what we do here. We try to keep you as informed as possible with tremendous analysis and really great analysis. And those are the two things we try to do. And I think we do it pretty well. And also good words use. So thank you all for listening. As always, make sure to check out everything at the Buckeye Scoop. There's been a ton of stuff lately. We've got some wrestling recruiting going up today, and there's always something. Basketball recruiting, football recruiting, actual football stuff as well, and there's going to be much more of that. And just subscribe to or check out all of the podcasts there at our radio network, because there are a bunch and there are more coming. So we're just trying to provide everything for you guys. If you are not a member yet, you might want to just sign up for a month and see how that goes, because things are going to be picking up now with camp starting. You're going to want to know the inside on what's going on inside, and we'll have that for you. And it's a great place to just interact, be the first to hear stuff, and to just be around Buckeye fans who are excited that the season is upon us. So thank you all for listening. And Tom, are we good to close?
Yes, nothing has changed in the last 30 seconds as you were plugging things. So yeah, we're good to close, and we will definitely see you guys on Thursday, September 3rd in Champaign, Illinois. Can't wait.
All right, sounds good. Thank you all, and we will talk to you later.